um, Puerto Rico is, or Puerto Ricans are a mix of three races. We have the indigenous, the Tainos, which were like the first people to arrive to the islands, and they go back, I think, to South America from Venezuela, and they reached these islands and slowly started populating these islands, and their diet was based on root vegetables and fish, and I don't know, they were lean and thin. Yeah. They were not, because they didn't consume, and they were not built like, I don't know, big people, because of island and how it is. And then I don't know if that makes sense, but anyways, then the Spanish came in, and they brought in a lot of diseases and stuff, and they got mixed in with the Tainos, and a lot of the Tainos were killed off, and then they brought in slaves to work the lands, because, well, the Tainos were really like sick, and there weren't that many, so they brought in slaves from Africa, from the east coast of Africa, to Puerto Rico, and in Puerto Rico, where you would find the most darker skinned or people from more African heritage will be people from the coast of the island, and that's where a lot of the sugarcane industry was worked on. So most of the coast was sugarcane, and then if you go in the mountains, that's where you would get coffee and more Spanish and like whiter looking people. Mm-hmm. And that's why, so it's kind of diverse. Some people have very different features, and they're all Puerto Ricans, so you can find a Puerto Rican who has never left the island, who is very, very white looking, kind of like you, and have like blonde hair and blue eyes, and it's Puerto Rican and doesn't know English. And it's like, how did that happen? And then you can have somebody from, I don't know, another town that has very thick black hair and straight hair. Like my brother has very thick, like Asian type hair, like thick and dark. And it's like, how did that happen? And mine is, well, right now it's not, but sometimes like it's wavy and very thin. Mm-hmm. So that's because of those three races. Mm-hmm. So the African and the Tainos and the Spanish. I don't know what the traditional features of Spanish are, but it's just like a lot of mix. Yeah. That goes back to that. And then the diet from the Africans was also like root vegetables and a lot of fried food. Plantains, cooked in very, very different ways. So they would take like green plantains. You can cook a green plantain. They would mash it and make like this thick, doughy consistency, and they would you can stuff it with meat or beef or fish or whatever you want, and then they seal that and deep fry it. And it tastes great. It sounds so good. That's called an alcapurria. And there's so many ways that we make food with plantains. So plantains is a staple. Okay. And rice and beans, even though rice does not grow, I mean, it does grow in Puerto Rico, but most of the rice is not grown in Puerto Rico. Like, it's shipped in from God knows where, from other places.
Knows? I don't know where it comes from.
We do grow... We do grow a lot of plantains, a lot of tropical fruits, coconuts, a lot of coconuts-based drinks. The pina colada is originally from Puerto Rico.
Oh, that's very claim to fame.
Yeah,
true.
What else is from Puerto Rico?
What would be a perfect meal if you were like go home, mom's cooking? Like, what would be a meal that?
Oh, there's two. There's one called pastelón, and it is green plantains. And you have to take it when it's, or you use them for this dish when they're like black almost, like when it's looking like, oh, I need to throw that out. That's when there has the most sugar, and it's really good for this particular dish. So you take ground beef and you cook it. You season it with salt, pepper, add some olives. We use in Puerto Rico we use a lot of olives, which I don't find a lot here. I find in Trader Joe's the ones that have pits, but we have the ones that don't have pits, and they're like in a glass jar, just sitting in like this water with some pepper bits, bell pepper things, and so you cook the ground beef, and then you take the plantains and you cut them long ways, and you take green beans also, and you layer the plantains, sweet plantains, on top of the ground beef, and layer some green beans, and then another layer of ground beef. So it's like a casserole, is that?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
You layer it each, and then you also add cheese on top, and then you bake that. I'm not exactly sure if I might be missing some parts in there because I'm not very good at cooking. It tastes great.
It's like sweet and savory.
Yeah.
Yep.
So that's one. It's called pastelón. Arroz con habichuelas, rice and beans. I love it when it's on the side, like just white rice and the beans, like in a stew with. We cook the beans with. We call it pumpkin calabaza, but it's actually, I think, because there's so many different kinds of pumpkins.
Like squash.
So I think maybe it's a pumpkin, but it looks like a squash. So it's like, your traditional orange Halloween pumpkin. So it's not orange. It's green and spotty, and it's like if you would squish it down. So it's like that, and it's just like spotty, and they grow everywhere. They grow in my backyard, and we use them a lot in cooking. And what else? Oh, recao. That's another thing that it's gonna be hard for me to find here. So it gives the beans a really good flavor, and it grows like a weed. I think it may be a weed, but it's really good. And it's called culantro, and it's kind of like cilantro, but it's not. But I guess that's the closest thing you would
Fine.
I can that you could relate to, or like picture.
So do you have trouble finding things like to cook? If you're cooking here, like do you have trouble finding ingredients that you need to cook meals, traditional meals that you enjoy in Puerto Rico here in the U.S.?
Yeah. So particular things like that.
Like the olives and other stuff.
Yeah. So and it's just there's a lot of diversity here. I've seen so many different vegetables and things that I don't know what they are here, and that's really cool. But the ones that I use in particular, sometimes I can't find, or just very exotic, and it becomes expensive because it's exotic here.
Yeah, right.
When it's like actually really cheap over there, and it's it's like the basic necessities type of thing.
So how do you eat different now than when you did when you lived in Puerto Rico?
I guess those things. I don't eat as much meat. I think I ate a lot of meat in Puerto Rico, way more, but it was because of where I was working. So on a lot of the day trips, we would have a meal at the end of the trip, and it had to be, because people want to go to Puerto Rico to experience the culture. So it had to be a cultural dish. So it would be rice and beans and maybe pork or like a beef stew, or chicken cooked in a Puerto Rican way, usually like in a stew with like all those ingredients that I mentioned. And I love it, but it's also I wasn't very happy about my diet over there because it was very high in salt, it was very high in fat, like a lot of rice is just a lot of sugar also, so but it tastes great. Tostones, I miss those. But the tostones were like these green fried plantains that just get smashed and fried.
Yum.
They taste great. So my diet here has changed. Like, what do I eat now? I don't know. I try to eat healthy, but I eat a lot of food in general. Because I'm not as active.
Mhm.
I'm working, just I'm driving home.